This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
We've got an event happening as opposed to a chapter called Waiting, which was honestly not the most fun chapter to try and talk about. We're waiting for something to happen.
And then, Chapter 5, Nightmares Walking, and her symbol's the triple trollic. So I've taken to calling it.
Pretty obvious.
Triple trollic threat. Triple trollic trounce.
Triple trollic.
Trollic traffic. All right, I'm done. Sorry.
Triple trollic trinkets.
Triple trollic trinkets.
The TTT.
Leaping from his bed, Parent snatched his axe and ran outside, barefoot, and wearing nothing but thin linen, heedless of the cold. The moon bathed the clouds with pale white, more than enough light for his eyes, more than enough to see the shapes slipping through the trees from all sides. Shapes almost as big as Loyal, both faces distorted by muzzles and beaks, half-human heads wearing horns and feathered crests, stealthy forms stalking on hooves or paws as often as booted feet. He opened his mouth to shout warning, and suddenly the door of Moraine's hut burst open and Lan dashed out, sword in hand and shouting, "Trollocs! Wake for your lives! Trollocs!"
The fact that it is dark and Perrin can see in the dark is a huge advantage in this battle.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought of that.
You know, all the other soldiers who are there are probably seeing him kind of as a shadow, maybe just his eyes flashing in the night. Like, I'm trying to think about what Perrin looks like from the other soldiers' perspective during this battle, because he would look ferocious.
Whereas everyone else is running around in the dark.
Exactly.
Perrin actually knows not only what's happening, but he's watching it. So, like, the wolves woke him up at the end of the last chapter.
Right.
A bull in the night.
And then just the fact that we see Lan dashing out, yelling Trollocs because he uses the Warder Bond to send. He senses the Shadow Spawn attacking.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some Trollocs that probably have good vision, but I'm guessing a lot of them have human eyes. They often describe them as having two human eyes and a bestial face. But there are a few, maybe like the hawk has better, but I guess hawks really are, they can see well, but not in the dark. So yeah, I guess it's possible a couple of the Trollocs had night vision, but, you know, that's still, even if some of them did, I think the majority of them wouldn't.
Yeah.
And certainly none of the people would.
I'd guess they're at more of an advantage than the humans, in any case.
Sure.
Well, as far as sight.
And the Trolloc wouldn't expect it. They're not smart enough to figure out that, oh, this one can see better. They'd sort of expect him to be blind and wouldn't expect him to be able to see what's going on. And so they might, like, try and be quiet to sneak up on him. And he can totally see them coming.
Doesn't he startle a Trolloc at some point when his eyes are, like, reflecting the light?
Yeah. Let's get into it, though.
Okay. But like you were saying, Perrin's looks out over across the bowl and can see Lan. And I hadn't really thought of it while I was reading it, but, you know, there's this little quote that I had highlighted where the warder danced, Trolloc screamed and died. But I didn't think about Perrin's hut being on the other side of the bowl. Moraine's is, like, removed from the rest of the huts.
Now, and I guess that's going to change pretty soon here because the trees are going to light up.
Yeah.
So I guess I didn't really think about that. It sort of negates his advantage, but at least in the beginning.
I liked Moraine was out in the night as well, dancing her own dance among the Trollocs. Her only apparent weapon was a switch, but where she slashed a Trolloc, a line of flame grew on its flesh. She seems fond of these, what does she call them? Focusing?
Yeah, she likes to focus her flame through something. She did it with the staff. She's doing it with this switch.
Yeah.
She's very talented at fire, which is not common in female Aes Sedai. And she likes to use it in battle. And she likes to channel it through something. Snakes
and Foxes has kind of an interesting question. He asked, I think is Moraine a Wilder? And maybe,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, she's White Tower trained, but we know that she learned some quote unquote tricks before. That's how it was found out that she could channel, that she was channeling.
And we know she has the blue stone listening trick, and that was one of her childhood tricks that she picked up.
Yeah.
She talks about that as a Wilder trick. I often wonder what her block must have been.
I don't know.
Or even if she had one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. She may not have had one because she may have, you know, not been aware of what she was doing. And I suspect it was detected pretty early because she lived in a populated city, in a
She was a noble.
populated court. Yeah, so she would have been around Aes Sedai anyway.
You know, I wonder who the Aes Sedai at the court was in Cairhien when she was growing up, because that person probably would have been able to get close enough to detect her channeling or her ability to channel.
We might be able to find out. That's not terribly important, but
Because, yeah, she grew up in the Sun Palace.
Before the Aiel War, so we could look. F it, let's look. King Laman.
Well, sure. She was his nephew, wasn't she? Niece. She was Laman's niece, so she was living in the Sun Palace.
I'm trying to see if I could find an Aes Sedai advisor for Laman, but I don't see any.
Yeah, I just don't think we get a history about that time in that city.
Nah. I thought maybe that might be in there, but it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, I can't think of where I'd look to find that out.
But bringing this back around, Perrin sees the first tree burst into flame.
And I'd like to point out that is Rand, not Moraine.
At first, it might appear to have been Moraine.
Because she's the one tossing fireballs around.
Right.
You don't see Rand doing anything. The trees just burst into flame spontaneously.
He says it out loud later that he managed to set the forest on fire and not do anything useful. Although, that was probably at least a little useful.
Yeah. Trollocs attack in the dark for a reason.
Perrin sees Leia, the Tuatha'an woman, step out of Moraine's cabin. And he starts yelling at her to get back in there and hide.
And I like the way Jordan has built suspense in this particular chapter by giving you the vision that she's going to die and then making you question whether the vision was real or not. Right.
Yeah.
So then you're spending this whole chapter on your first read through wondering, wait, is Leia going to die or isn't she? I don't know. And then he sort of plays with you a little bit, I think, during this chapter. And that's where you get this, like, Lee's about to get killed by Trolloc, and then Perrin saves her, and then he saves her, and then oh, it's too late.
Yeah. A Trolloc creeps up on her, but Perrin's over there in an instant. He fights the thing, falls over, but grabs its legs. And they go tumbling down a hill?
Yeah, and though Trolloc gets a pretty good score on his back, probably digs in pretty deep. That's what Moraine heals later.
Yeah.
But this is Perrin's first real wound in battle.
Oh, yeah. Moraine says it's mostly surface, that the bruise goes deep, but the slice is just
Sure.
not too bad.
Something terrifies me about being chewed on in battle. I think there's something like really animalistic about that. Like,
of course.
When you think about like animals and like zombie movies, like what's the most horrifying thing? It's when they start like eating
to be
you
eaten alive.
Yeah.
Perrin managed to kill the thing in a struggle, the Trolloc.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that he looks back at Leia.
And she feels sorry for him. Like, she sees the damage that it's doing to him.
Yeah.
She sees what he's sacrificing to
and he
kill
yells
these
at her,
Trollocs.
"Don't you dare pity me," basically.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, but
that's exactly what. Don't
like,
pity
I just
me,
saved your
growled.
life.
He understands what the Tinkers are thinking.
Yeah. He's cut off as he's yelling at Leia. The Murjol's leap from the roof of the hut seemed to take too long, and its dead black cloak hung during the slow fall as if the half-man were standing on the ground already. Its eyeless gaze was fixed on Perrin. It smelled like death.
That's such a cool image of the Murdral like falling, but not instead of the cloak like billowing out like a mist cloak or something like that. It's just straight down the whole time.
It doesn't act.
It's not affected by the wind. It's not affected by, any wind resistance of the air blowing up through it.
I also liked that Perrin. I mean, it's not the first time we've started to see Perrin's like smells and his smell and sense of smell and his sense of sight improving. But this is, I feel like, where it really becomes this constant thing in all the Perrin narratives, where it's just a part of his experience.
It's the first time he really embraces being a wolf.
Yeah.
He comes back from it, but like it happens to him kind of when the White Cloaks attack.
He doesn't really know what's going on yet then. But yeah, there's something similar that happens.
No, I'm really looking forward to seeing the Murdral displayed on TV, and if they do the cloak not moving thing.
I like that.
That would be really cool to see.
A creepy sight.
It would disturb you immediately on a subconscious level if the Murdral's cloak wasn't moving when everything else was.
Yeah.
If it's pulled off subtly.
And the Murdral speaks to Perrin. Cut one leg of the tripod, it said softly, and I'll fall down.
This Murdral knows who Perrin is. It's trying to kill any one of the three Taviran in order to get at Rand.
Yeah.
Because as we know, without both Perrin and Matt, there's no way Rand would have made it to the last battle, much less won it.
Suddenly Leia moved, throwing herself forward, attempting to wrap her arms around the Murdral's legs. It gave an almost casual backward swing of its dark sword, never even looking around. She crumpled.
And Min was right. Hashtag Min was right. Min is always right. This is lesson number 1. Min is always right.
Right without knowing.
Leia has a bit of an interesting motivation. I think part of it is she does see evil in the world and wants to fight it. Moraine says that not everyone has the same tools that you do, Perrin. So it's clear that Leia, as a person, wants to fight the darkness.
Yeah.
And wants to fight the shadow. And so I can kind of see where, she wants to help Perrin and jumps at the Murdral. But it wasn't the smartest move on her part.
She just dies immediately.
Yeah.
And in the same moment, Perrin gets ascending from the wolves. We come, young bull. The words inside his mind made his head ring like a struck bell. The reverberation shivered through him. With the words came the wolves, scores of them, flooding into his mind as he was aware of them flooding into the bowl-shaped valley. Mountain wolves, almost as tall as a man's waist, all white and gray, coming out of the night at a run. Oh, this, I think, is what I was thinking of before. Wolves filled him till he could barely remember being a man. His eyes gathered the light, shining golden yellow, and the half-man stopped its advance as if suddenly uncertain.
I feel like that's an instinctual, the half-man know the wolves hate them.
I'm laughing at the meme Stormblast just posted. Is that from Brave Sir Robin? Brave Sir Robin bravely ran away?
That's from Holy Grail.
Well, yeah, Brave Sir Robin, yeah. Bravely ran away. But anyway.
But no, there's so many spots where they're in trouble, and then you get that, "We come, brother." It's such a great line, and it's always wolves pulling Perrin's bacon out of the fire. This is where he really, that ferociousness and that anger, and I feel like almost that wolf memory and hatred of Shadow Spawn sort of takes over and takes his fear away.
Yeah.
If anything, I describe Perrin as having a wilder block. And that...
I can see the correlation.
Right. And that he really, if he just was able to embrace his abilities, he would become the super Perrin that we see later, the teleporting badass in Teleron Riyadh. But because he is so tightly locked down, he has this block, the only way to overcome it is by immersing himself in the wolves. And so the only time we ever see him actually let himself go is when he becomes, basically one with the wolf.
Yeah, I really like that. That's why I like those last couple of lines that I just read. He threw himself at the Murdral. It moved like a viper, sinuous and deadly, black sword quick as lightning. But he was young bull.
Never born. And then he kills like a wolf.
Hamstring and throat. That was how wolves killed. Young Bill suddenly threw himself to one side and dropped to a knee, axe slicing across the back of the half-man's knee. It screamed. And then he cuts its head mostly off, and it just thrashes on the ground, of course. But hey, Perrin's first Murdral.
Is that his first?
I think so. I could be wrong.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is really his awakening. I mean, he's definitely fought in battles before. Because he fought at Falma.
Yeah. What about in Faldara?
Oh, he fought his way in the Blight. They were definitely fighting things in the Blight, but that was more just hacking through hostile brambles.
Yeah. But then just humans, because of the Shan-Chan and the White Cloaks. He seems to kill it easily.
Yeah, the Murdral, they get downgraded pretty quick.
Well, you could say the boys got upgraded.
That's true.
Neverborn were always long and dying.
And the fact that he basically is totally unaffected by the Murdral gaze because of protection from the wolf may have taken the Murdral by surprise.
I'd think so. At least hesitated, because all the wolves showed up at that moment.
And just expected the gaze to work a little bit better?
Yeah. Next thing I have is Perrin going back to Leia and seeing her, seeing basically what Min's vision was. Blood covered her face, and her eyes stared up at him, glazed with death. An accusing stare, it seemed to him.
And it's funny, I think the accusation is not for not saving her. The accusation is for doing violence. I think he's being defensive about the fact that he had to kill the Trolloc in order to save her.
I'm nodding. The wolves call him to come back to the fight.
And he does, basically. He lets the wolves take him over, and he goes back to fighting. And so we get a glimpse of all of the other...
The night flashing blue with Lan fighting a Myrddraal. I learned a word today, even though I've read this series a few times. The night air flashed actinic blue. It has to do with photography and bright ultraviolet light. Actinic. I had to look that up.
But I can see the blue flash of lightning is what he's trying to describe there.
The night air flashed actinic blue, like sheet lightning, as Lan engaged another Myrddraal. Ancient Aes Sedai made steel, meeting black steel wrought in Thakandar, in the shadow of Shale Ghul. Loyal wielded a quarterstaff the size of a fence rail. I just like that image.
We so rarely actually get a scene of Loyal fighting, so him picking up this gigantic quarterstaff and just bashing any Trolloc that comes near him is such a great scene and such good foreshadowing for when we actually see a force of Ogier fight.
Oh yeah, I always think of that scene in the last battle where the axes are sprouting leaves.
Yeah.
the Ogier's axes and weapons come to life.
Because aren't they singing?
Yeah. I also just another paragraph down, Perrin is observing the wolves fighting in small packs of 3 or 4. And he notes there was no honor in the way they fought, no glory, no mercy. They had not come for battle, but to kill.
I like that image.
Me too.
Yeah.
They're just doing a job.
They're just here to make sure that the stain of the Trollocs is cleaned up.
Yeah, this isn't about grace. This is about...
And it's not about food.
No.
It's not about survival.
It's just about death.
It's something that has to get done. See, this goes back to my off-the-wall theory that Teleron-Riyadh is the Dark One's prison and the wolves are its guardians, and that's why they hate the Shadow Spawn.
I like it. I've always liked it.
Yeah, I have no evidence for it. I like it. It's not supported by anything out there, and I think you can even point to a few things that make it explicitly wrong, but I still like it. So yeah, that's totally my headcanon. And it's why the wolves have that sort of inherited memory. It's why they are able to survive in the wolf dream. It's why they're heroes of the Horn.
Yeah, they're special creatures.
They're very special creatures. And it's why the opposite, a corrupted wolf, becomes a Darkhound.
Yeah.
Because they are special creatures, and the only way you could create a Darkhound is with a special wolf.
I like that RJ put that connection in there, that wolves and humans are close somehow. And their relationship is important. And they both have individual souls, I guess? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In the way that maybe we wouldn't think of wild animals as having an individual soul as much as a totemic soul. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like in Native American stories where they kind of refer to Coyote as just as a character, as a single.
I see what you mean.
But this is pretty much the end of the fight here. We see Perrin losing himself a little bit more, or coming to the brink that he's afraid of.
There's a good scene where this pack takes down a Myrddraal, and they all die except for one, and Perrin howls along with her.
Yeah.
And he flashes back to being human, howling in the middle of
And Perrin's not there, he's watching it in his mind.
Yeah, totally.
Now that the Trollocs and Myrddraal are broke and are retreating, the wolves are chasing them. Raising her head, Morning Mist howled to the cloud-hidden moon, mourning her dead. Youngbull threw back his head and howled with her, mourned with her. When he lowered his head, Min was staring at him. Are you all right, Perrin? She asked hesitantly.
Are you insane?
There was a bruise on her cheek, and a sleeve half torn from her coat. She had a cudgel in one hand and a dagger in the other, and there was blood and hair on both.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that means she took out a couple of Trollocs, or at least defended herself.
Min's out there being a badass.
And we don't see it directly, but RJ likes to give us little hints like this. Oh yeah, she's got blood on both the dagger and the cudgel. Yeah. And she's fine.
Oh, check this thing that Jalen is saying. Didn't we have a theory about that? The wolf, that Perrin has a twin soul?
Yes, because they often talk about the way that Slayer got access to Teleron Riyadh was by merging two different kinds of souls together.
That's right.
And that's what he has in common, and that's what he tries to say, you are like me, brother, we are two things merged together. I am two people, you are a wolf soul and a human soul that have merged together. Now, are those two different souls? Is it, how exactly that works? I don't really know. Is it a wolf reborn inside of Perrin with him? Is there something with Hopper going on? Probably not.
Yeah, and we don't know, I don't think, if it's one of those soul-bound abilities like channeling. Will Perrin be reborn a wolf brother? I would think so.
I would think so. I would think he's always a wolf brother. I mean, who he is a wolf brother.
Yeah.
That's not going to change. His soul is a wolf. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not Hopper because it started before he died, but,
Perrin shuts himself off from the wolves after that.
But that goes back, is Min always a Doomseer?
Yeah, I don't know.
Can Suon always see Ta'Veren?
Are the talents, I'm using the term soul-bound, I just made that up, but in the way that channeling is?
Can we even generalize to all the various different talents, or are they all unique?
Different? There's no way to know. Perrin walls himself off from the wolves again and tells Min he's all right. You fought well, blacksmith, Lan said. The warder raised his still bloody sword above his head. Taishar Manetherin, Taishar Andor. The Shinarans, still standing, so few, lifted their blades and joined him. Perrin sees that as Lan deflecting attention so that Perrin doesn't have to explain himself.
I didn't necessarily see that.
Oh, well, I guess Perrin says Perrin lowered his eyes in embarrassment. Lan had saved him from questions he did not want to answer. So I guess it could have been unintentional.
I mean, he just stopped howling and Lan turns to him and says, you fought well, blacksmith.
Yeah.
Which in and of itself is something that Lan never says.
Praise.
Yeah. So he must have fought like a demon in the night, just glowing yellow eyes, taking him out. And sort of Min reiterates to him that there's nothing he could have done for Leah, even if he wanted to.
No way around that. I'm skipping a bit, but the next thing I have is Masima suggesting that the wolves helping them in their battle is a sign.
And I think this is where, he's gone a little nutso before, but this is where he gets the idea to be the prophet.
It is. There's like a specific line. I think it's in this chapter somewhere, yeah. I think. Or maybe it's in the next one.
It's interesting that I think Perrin makes Masima, and then he becomes his problem later.
What I'm thinking of, maybe you're thinking of something different, is when Perrin and Masima are talking, and Masima asks Perrin, why did Rand leave us?
Yeah, that is the next chapter.
And Perrin's just like, well, listen, I'm sure there's a reason. Quit freaking out. And Masima's like, yes, to spread word of his coming. Yeah. That's what we should all be doing.
And then we don't see him again.
And he goes crazy-eyed again. Even wolves came to fight for the Dragon Reborn. In the last battle, the Lord Dragon will summon even the beasts of the forest to fight at our sides. His friend, anyway.
Yeah. Not really Rand, but the guy you're talking to is the one who kind of does it, not Rand.
Close, buddy.
Yeah. Because this is twice now that the beasts have fought. Because they came at Falma.
Right. That's right.
And so this is the second time that Masima has seen Rand, quote unquote, call the beasts.
Yeah.
Or seen Perrin do it, basically.
It is a sign for us to go forth, Masima continues. Only dark friends will fail to join us. 2 of the Shinarans nodded. You shut your bloody mouth, Masima, Uno snapped. Will flaming go forth when the dragon bloody well tells us, and not before. You sheep-headed farmers flaming, remember that.
I love a good Uno curse.
Everybody loves Uno.
But yeah, this only dark friends will fail to join us is something that leads to that's where the prophet really goes wrong.
His religious fervor.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the White Cloaks. It's that same sentiment of, if you're not with us, you must be against us.
Yeah, which is just ridiculous. But Uno goes on to say, at least we'll have plenty of flaming wolf eyes to keep the wounded warm. And Perrin flips out.
Yeah.
And says, they fought with us, and we'll bury them with our dead.
Gee, this guy with wolf's eyes that fights with wolves, who howls like a wolf and protects the wolf corpses. I bet Rand summoned the wolves. Fucking Massima's a moron.
Yeah, that's a good point, Arady. I had that thought while I was reading this. Wouldn't it take a while to make blankets out of that? It would still be wet. It's not like a thing you can do immediately. Just change a pelt into a blanket.
Maybe he's thinking they'll be there for a while.
Oh, probably.
But yeah, they wouldn't like use them that night. I don't just like
Carcass blanket.
and I thought these things smelled bad on the outside. Just cut open a wolf and crawl inside.
Like a tauntaun.
Exactly. I'm not sure that Uno really thought that one through. This is some of the last contact that Min gets with Rand for a while.
Yeah. Moraine sends her off to Tarvelin in the next chapter.
And then they don't reconnect until after he comes back from the waste.
Yeah. Perrin goes off looking for Rand, who's sulking. Do you know what I did during the fight? Still staring into the distance, Rand addressed the night. Nothing. Nothing useful. At first, when I reached out for the true source, I couldn't touch it, couldn't grasp it. I kept sliding away. Then when I finally had hold of it, I was going to burn them all, burn all the Trollocs and Fades, and all I could do was set fire to some trees. He shook with silent laughter.
So there we get the line about the trees going up.
Yeah.
So we know he did it. I also noticed that Perrin smells blood and not only his own. And I wasn't sure what that was at first until later we realized that Rand's wound has broken open.
Oh, yeah.
So that blood that he's smelling is actually Rand's blood, but not from a Trolloc attack or anything, just from the wound in his side breaking open.
Perrin tries to reassure Rand, but it's pretty weak. He says we dealt with them. We didn't need you.
Which, I mean, they definitely could have used him.
Yeah.
But not by pulling the mountain down.
Rand says I felt the shadow spawn coming, but he didn't know what it was. I also noticed that he said they felt like the taint on Sidene.
Yeah, I highlighted that too.
It makes sense that there would be a connection.
That the shadow spawn and the taint on Sidene are basically feel like the same thing.
Would feel like the same thing to him. I couldn't really draw too much else from that other than the obvious connection of the Dark One, two things.
I think the idea that also channelers can feel the shadow spawn coming.
Yeah.
You know, we see Moraine say that, but I guess Rand has finally attuned to the power well enough that that's a new ability that he's gained as a channeler to actually sense shadow spawn coming.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I pulled out of that. That's I think the first time he's actually able to sense the shadow spawn.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think he ever mentions it before that. Even
though he's been around them plenty. And Perrin says he feels guilty because if he would have known the Trollocs were coming too if
he had been listening.
You know, Lan was fully clothed and not sleeping. I bet he, based on Min's vision, was probably just up in case of an attack.
Well, yeah, at the end of the last chapter, didn't Moraine say something like...
Be prepared and sleep well?
Yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's like, no.
Right before Perrin tries to go to sleep.
Lan sleeps rarely.
Yeah, she says make sure the guards are especially alert tonight in the last chapter. Sleep well.
So, and we seem to be coming to a bit of a consensus that a lot of Rand's insanity here is, it may be the beginning of his insanity, but it's mostly stress. That at this point, he's got no real useful abilities. He can't protect himself. He can't help anybody. He doesn't know what to do next. He's in constant arguments with Moraine. And the stress is just, he doesn't really have a plan. Yeah,
it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's just a young kid, really.
After he gets Kalendor, he spends a little bit of time in the Stone of Tyr plotting basically the rest of his plan.
Yeah.
You know, he learns a few things later, but he sort of makes this big plan to get the people of the dragon, come back, do his conquering, you know, plans out how to attack a lot of the Forsaken. And Moraine's going nuts because he's not telling her any of it.
How the tables will turn.
Oh, yeah. But I think from that point on, he's executing his plan. And so he's able to be a little less stressed and more, you know, just plain old insane.
Yeah, right now he's just kind of losing his mind. Well, with stress, not with insanity yet. But we've talked about this a little over the last couple episodes where he does appear crazy in these chapters. But I think we both agree that he's not yet.
Well, I think he's, like I said in the last one, I think he's a hatter. He's not a mad hatter yet, but he's definitely on his way.
It's a slow creep.
Yeah.
And the next thing I had noted here is just Perrin thinking, or maybe feeling reassured that Elias ran with the wolves all the time, yet seemed able to remember he was a man.
It was always very obvious to me that, like, it wasn't a problem to give in to the wolves for Perrin.
No, I don't think so.
That he is making this up to himself. He is paranoid and like worried.
Afraid
but the
of
reality
unknown.
is he just needs to let it. Like, he would be fine. He is Wolf.
Paranoid.
God.
That was a radio.
That was nice. Nice.
No, that's good.
Nice. Paranoid.
But for real though, he's afraid of the unknown. He doesn't know what he's happening to him, and him and Rand are going through something really similar. Matt will be soon too, where he starts to think the Dark One's own luck stuff. He's like, what's wrong with what's happening to me?
Especially with all the memories in his heads too, that he has trouble like differentiating between other men's memories at one point. And like he has this whole thing where he's worried that he's losing his identity, and then he just like gets to the point where he's like, "Hey, they're just memories.
Yeah,
I use them."
Book 4-ish. After he gets hung from the tree of life, if that isn't a symbol.
We get Moraine popping up, and I know she still has that ivory angreal that she uses frequently. Does anyone know where she loses it? Because I don't think she has it when she attacks Lanfear. It just kind of vanishes. And I was never able to figure out where it went.
Does she have to give it back? I can't remember what happens.
Yeah, Suan says she wants it back, but that was back in Faldara, and so clearly she still has it now.
Yeah.
And I don't think Moraine ever returns to the White Tower.
I'm actually responding to someone on Facebook who says they don't know how to get into Discord.
Yeah, I think one of the points of the book is that men and women do good things when they actually do communicate and do talk. And that's sort of where you see the bad communication in the beginning lead to bad outcomes, and then good communication at the end leading to good outcomes. So, I think that a lot of the annoyance in the beginning with the lack of communication between men and women is actually Jordan making a point that is something that's important to do, and as the characters move away from non-communication to communication, they become more successful. I mean, it goes back to even Lewis Theron Telamon going off half-cocked to seal the Dark One away without the women.
Right. They said they wouldn't help, and he was just like, well, we'll do it ourselves. See how that worked out?
I think that's a point that Jordan hammers home over and over and over again. And it's kind of annoying to a lot of people in the beginning that these characters just won't freaking sit down and talk to each other.
And the symbolism of Saidar and Saidin.
Sure.
The two opposing forces that work together at the same time.
Yeah, the male-female balance. I mean, the dark light. This book is all about balance. Yeah. So Perrin gets healed, and we get sort of it's interesting to compare this description of being healed, where he's just like totally loses himself, is unable to control his muscles, like barely knows what's happening, to later when like Rand is just like, oh yeah, thanks for the healing. I guess that's, yeah, cool, whatever.
I did like this short description when Moraine heals him.
Good.
I can read some of it. And this is, I feel like, one of the better descriptions of healing.
Yes.
I'll just read some of it. The Aes Sedai's eyes suddenly seemed to be seeing something inside of him, seeing through him. He gasped and almost dropped his axe. He could feel the skin on his back crawling, muscles writhing as they knit back together. His shoulder quivered uncontrollably, and everything blurred. Cold seared him to the bone, then deeper still. He had the impression of moving, falling, flying. He could not tell which, but he felt as if he were rushing, somewhere, somehow, at great speed, forever. After an eternity, the world came into focus again. Moraine was stepping back, half staggering until Lan caught her arm. Lan notes later that there will only be a little scar, which means Moraine held back.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think she could have healed him fully, but she passes out after she heals Rand in a second here. And she's already, Lan is like trying to lead her around by the arm and fussing over her.
I just assumed that it was a point of how good of a healing it was that there was nothing but a scar left.
Yeah, that she could have gone all the way, but I feel like she does a A- because she's already so tired. I think that because she's exhausted, she doesn't do a full 100%. She just gives him what he needs to stop bleeding, to make him useful again,
Fair.
That's the way I saw it anyway. Moraine tells him to eat, but we know about this. That she took the strength of his own body and used it to heal him faster.
And that's just standard tower battlefield healing.
Yeah.
That's all they know is basically the water and air and spirit healing.
I think that's right.
And they use those three, and it's just basically heals everything all at once using the energy from the person who's being healed, and that allows the Aes Sedai to do more healing rather than exhausting themselves.
Yeah.
I think. But it just requires so much energy. It's really not and it probably requires less training.
Or what Nynaeve doesn't use the energy of it just uses the power rather than...
Right. But it probably requires more effort on the part of the person channeling.
I would think so. It requires more... It's a more complex weave, right? Using all 5 powers.
So the deal with the all or nothing healing of the Aes Sedai is they can't pick and choose what wounds to heal. They can only heal everything. They heal everything at once, and they can choose when to stop.
Right.
But they can't just heal the most deadly wounds. And so a lot of times what happens is because they would have to heal anything, they'd have to pull out a lot of your energy, too much of your energy to heal all the minor wounds that you could have lived with. And so that's one of the reasons why it was less effective in terms of healing deadly wounds. You're healed, but the shot kills you, basically.
Yeah. I also noted that right after this, Moraine tells Perrin that most of the wounded wolves ran off, but she found some and she healed them as well.
Yeah, clearly she put out a lot of power to do that because she healed all the soldiers, all the wolves.
And she says, perhaps they came for their own reasons, yet we would likely all be dead without them. And this is where they noticed Rand's wound. Perrin noticed something for the first time. Rand, your coat is wet. Rand pulled his right hand from under his coat, a hand covered in blood. Not a murdral, he said absently, peering at his hand. Not even a Trolloc. The wound I took at Falma broke open. Moraine hissed and jerked her arm free of Lan, half fell to her knees beside Rand.
Why do you think the wound breaks open?
I would think just the physical activity and having you could... I'm making a motion to Seth, but you could just... I feel like he could just reach and pull the thing open. Like if you have stitches in a spot, you could rip them out if you jerk your body around.
But he wasn't doing anything. He was just sitting there struggling with himself.
I kind of thought that's what you might be getting at. Yeah, was he just sitting still?
Yeah. This is my sort of side thought here. Because he fights with the sword all the time. He practices. He's rough. It's not physical activity that's breaking it open. It's the presence of the shadow. And that swells the wound with the true power cyst and basically causes it to burst open because there's too much of that dark power near him. Because it seems to break open when he's fighting, either channeling or fighting the Dark One of some. So channeling could make sense, that when he channels and he brings more taint into him, that it's focused in that spot.
Yeah, I never thought of it that way, but I don't see why not.
And that's what's causing it to burst.
I like it. We'll have to keep an eye on that in the future, though. I'm going back to a minute ago.
Sure.
The taint thing, because that is an interesting theory. I would like to see if, like, the next time it breaks open, we got to try to keep an eye on what he's doing.
Definitely. But here, I think he was trying to see Sidene and basically was swimming in it because he was trying not to shake down the mountains and clearly lighting up trees and stuff like that. So
yeah,
he had the power pouring through him and the taint pouring through him.
And yeah, there's just a ton of scenes later where, the wound in his side pulsed with pain or whatever.
I also have to wonder if maybe having the wound in his side kept him from going mad because much of the taint ended up there rather than in his brain.
Yeah, maybe. And the opposing forces, this doesn't happen till later, but the dagger cut and the stab wound from Ishmael.
Right. And we definitely know that, like, part of the reason that the taint from Fane's dagger doesn't kill Rand immediately is that it's fought by the opposite taint of the... Okay. Shall we move on to the next point? Because we can speculate about that wound forever.
Moraine drops to her knees beside Rand and says, brace yourself. I'm skipping like a bunch of paragraphs. She heals him.
He's going a little fatalistic here. Just put me on the rocks of Sheol Ghul and let me die, and that'll be the end of it.
She's like, yeah, it's not that simple, kid. And she says, After Moraine heals Rand, I have done as much as I can, she said faintly. As much as I can. You must be careful. It could break open again if... Her voice trailed off. She fell. Rand caught her, but Lan was there in an instant to scoop her up. As the warder did so, a look passed across his face. A look as close to tenderness as Perrin had ever expected to see from Lan. I'm just going to read forward. Stop me whenever you want, because this is an interesting little part.
Rand offers to heal, and it's just a terrible idea.
Min points out that Rand could potentially help Moraine.
Right. And just like, no. He doesn't know enough.
It isn't that I do not think you would try, sheepherder, he said, but you know so little you might as soon kill her as help her. That's right, Rand said bitterly. I'm not to be trusted. Luce Theron Kinslayer killed everyone close to him. Maybe I'll do the same before I am done. Pull yourself together, sheepherder, Lan said harshly. The whole world rides on your shoulders. Remember you're a man, and do what needs to be done. Rand looked up at the warder, and surprisingly, all of his bitterness seemed to be gone. I will fight the best I can, he said, because there's no one else, and it has to be done, and the duty is mine. I'll fight, but I do not have to like what I've become. He closed his eyes as if going to sleep. I will fight dreams.
I have a lot to say about that. Two things. One, these dreams. I think they're being projected by Bilal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is sort of, this is dreams are the last thing he says before he disappears.
Yeah.
So clearly the dreams are influencing him. My other thought, and I don't have a lot of good evidence of this other than the fact that Rand is staying ahead of the party when they're chasing him, is that Rand may be popping in and out of the world of dreams in the flesh.
It's possible. I don't know that this is listed anywhere, but I think we have a really strong theory that Rand is a dreamer.
Oh, yeah.
There's tons of evidence for it. He just never develops it in any meaningful way.
And I'm wondering, he does a lot of things unconscious.
Yeah, I was interested to, especially over the next few chapters, hear what you had to say, because you've talked about this before while Rand is running. How does he manage to stay ahead that whole time? Moraine says that he projects his dreams around at everyone unconsciously, like Sam is saying. But I wasn't sure if she was right. Moraine's wrong sometimes.
Yeah, Moraine's wrong sometimes. And so what I think is going on is that Bilal is projecting those dreams to pull, he's described as the net weaver. And so I think he's trying to pull Rand to him in order to get Kalendor out of the trap. And we see an argument between Ishamael and Bilal here in the dream world. In, I think it was the last chapter 2 chapters ago.
Yeah.
And the argument, my assumption is that Ishi is trying to kill Rand and Bilal is trying to draw him to the stone so he can get Kalendor. And they're arguing about that.
One thing that's occurring to me is that if Bilal is putting the dream in Rand's head, is Rand then like a sounding board to everyone else around him?
It's possible. I'm not really sure which of the two.
Like a cell tower,
Yeah,
like
a repeater.
Yeah.
That Bilal's putting the dream in his head, and because he doesn't shield his dreams, he's then projecting it onto everyone else. That's entirely possible.
That seems like a good.
But I really, really do think that, Rand's never seen the stone. He wouldn't know what it looks like.
Right.
So someone has to be giving him those dreams. And I think it's Bilal. Whether Bilal's projecting them onto everybody or just Rand, I don't know. But I like the idea that he's just giving them to Rand and Rand's spreading them out to everybody else. But we'll definitely be spending a fair amount of time speculating about how he stays ahead in the rest of the book. I don't think that's something we have to resolve right now because we'll be seeing a ton of evidence and debating a bunch of spots.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens over the next 10 chapters or so. I was reading before, because there's no one else and it has to be done, and the duty is mine. I'll fight, but I do not have to like what I've become. He closed his eyes as if going to sleep. I will fight. Dreams. Lan stared down at him a moment, then nodded. He raised his head to look across Moraine at Perrin and Min. Get him to his bed, then see to some sleep yourselves. We have plans to make, and the light alone knows what happens next.
Got a date this weekend? No, not Friday. I made sure to tell her that Friday was taken. Don't worry. My fantasy life comes far before my real life. Do not worry about that. I have my priorities straight.
I just tell people I'm working now. Like, if I have to explain it to my bosses or something, like, no, I can't come in late. I have to work my other job.
Basically.
I don't want to have to explain the whole thing. I'm just, cutting it down.
Oh, I put it out there. I'm just like, I talk to anybody about the Wheel of Time.
Oh, well, I avoid any drawn-out conversations with the people that own my restaurant. They're,
That's fair.
yeah.
I've met them.
Just avoid it.
She is not a Wheel of Time fan, but I've long ago, on trying to convince someone to try and find someone who's also a Wheel of Time fan and has everything else in common. I figure I can change them, right? That's my goal, is really, I am an ambassador for the Wheel of Time, so I am out there to convince people to read it. Now, if she doesn't read it after a year or so, that's relationship ending levels of stuff, but
convert to our cult.
It's not a cult. It's not a cult.
Book club.
It's a cult. It's a little bit of a cult. It's a good cult. I don't know. The con felt a lot like a cult meeting. We had our own language. We had our priests. We had our gods. The first rule of Watt spoilers is you do not talk about Watt. Wait, no. Go ahead. Talk about it. I want to talk to everyone about it. Ooh, tax exemption. It was pretty funny. I was looking at our tax documents because we started this company to run the podcast stuff, and I was just trying to figure out like what the deal was and what we could deduct. And I was like, oh, we can deduct rent.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll pretty much cover. We are making zero profits according to the government if we can deduct rent. And also like all the plane, we figured there's the plane tickets out to the con and all that kind of other stuff that we spent money on. So, but yeah, I'm slowly figuring out the benefits to being a LLC as opposed to being just a private citizen.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?